I'm gonna,
Sorry about that, Senator.
okay, we're gonna have to repeat everything. I just wanted to give a little overview on what we're doing and actually what we haven't done at the state. Last session, we had working groups on energy. And there was, battery storage, energy production, efficiency. There were like 6 different working groups all around energy. One of them was data centers. And so when it came to the data center discussion, we were talking about, well, there's already an existing bill out there carried by Senator Stadelman on just transparency. We want to see, not necessarily, we want to see what energy and water usage looks like by data centers generally. It could be all anonymous. So one particular data center is not going to have their data shared. It would just be the accumulation of energy and water. That's still out there. It would be nice to have that data so that we could start making decisions on a state and regional basis. So that one hasn't really moved anywhere. The working group, we had a lot of discussions on energy. Where's the source? Where's all this energy going to come from? And the proposals ranged from bring your own, you must, if you're going to have a data center, great. Build a solar field,
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And wind turbines.
Exactly, right. And then as far as water reuse, there's actually University of Illinois Prairie Research Institute. I talked to a professor, a researcher there, who's interested in geothermal.
Yes.
Exchange of gathering heat and then using heat to generate and kind of cycling it to help mitigate the costs of data centers. But that bill, the large energy omnibus bill, kind of died of its own weight. There were so many provisions and just enough opposition here, there, everywhere that pretty much everybody who was opposed to the bill just said, yeah, well, we'll just wait it out and see. And that was a great strategy for them because, in spite of our best efforts. In fact, part of that bill was a municipal utility transparency bill that Janet Yang-Rohr and I are supporters of. So there's been a lot of talk, no action at the state level, and so now I want to talk a little bit about regional. So I mentioned I'm on the Great Lakes Legislative Caucus. That it's, for me, I have benefited so much just by learning. I'm, learning so much about the Great Lakes, but I also enjoy kind of a regional outlook. And one of the problems I have, or challenges, or maybe you guys can help me think through this, is if we put guardrails here in the state. I mentioned aquifers don't have state boundaries. Neither do electric grids. Up in the northern area, we're part of PJM. In the south, we're part of MISO. So my concern is that if we say, oh, nope, you got to do this before you can build a data center, in Ohio, they'll be like, here, let me pay you to build a data center. And meanwhile, the electricity usage will be on the grid. So our capacity prices are in the capacity auction would still be high. And right now, that's one of the drivers for the ComEd utility is capacity prices are driving the rate increases. So that's one of the challenges I have is if we do this, we could still bear the brunt and the cost of data centers in spite of our best efforts. So I've talked about maybe having a regional approach. It might be something that needs to be done through those RTOs, through PJM and MISO, using national levers. But I don't think the national federal brain is able to do anything. Right. So so energy usage, data transparency, potentially bringing your own or other types of ways to minimize the cost on ratepayers and, soften the effects of this greater electrical demand, which will tend to increase prices regardless. So, we're going to be talking about that. I don't think we're going to be talking about it in veto, but definitely in the spring, this will come up as a topic of discussion. So anything that you hear about what other states are doing or anything about a regional approach, I am all ears. I want to do what's best for our state and our residents. Yeah.
We're talking about water and utility and energy and really important to also, diesel engines are not. So the pollution aspect, right? Diesel engines are not
Oh,
friendly to your health.
No. particulates.
I know it's
NOx.
or whatever, but I see videos, interviews and stuff like that, and people who live near these data centers. Air quality is horrible, health outcomes are bad. So there's the unseen cost that we need to really be aware of, and pay attention to.
Thank you very
The
much.
data center is not good for Naperville, in my opinion. I don't care if price, I do care if price go up. They're gonna go up anyways, because data centers are everywhere. But it's not good for our community, and it's not good for anything, to be honest. For a data center going, I don't even know what the potential benefits are, besides making the rich people richer.
Exactly.
Governor Pritzker is very pro getting business in Illinois, and I think my impression is that he's encouraged this.
There
development.
is an incentive right now for data
But-
centers.
So he is on board with all these data centers and the quality of life being drained from our residents. Is that right?
That I don't know. I know that part of that working group, energy working groups, did have people from the governor's office on there. So they've been part of the conversation. I would say that I can't speak for him, but I would guess that maybe his,
Maybe he
what
didn't
he
realize.
proposed 2 or 3 years ago is a little bit different now.
I
Yeah.
read that, one of the reasons he really wants it here is so that Illinois will have more control, because again, like I said, that, there are shared resources that will affect us, whether it's water from the, Lake Michigan, like that, it's gonna affect us, and having them in Illinois, this is what I read, is that Pritzker felt that we would have not only that kind of benefit of it, but more control over it.
I
That's
just don't
what I
think
got.
he realized.
So can we hold off questions until afterwards, because I need to get more speakers up here. Justin from the transportation group just needs a couple of minutes. To give you an announcement.
I'll make it quick because got a good topic here. So I'm actually part of the transportation group. I'm part of the group that kind of got bicycle and pedestrian going. And so I'll make it real quick, but City of Naperville has actually selected a consultant. And so we're excited. Epstein. So they're starting to do community outreach pop-ups. There was one at the public safety event here this last weekend. And some of you have had a chance to visit. So there'll be a couple more coming out, and I'm going to send out an email to Ted and to the others to kind of share with you on some opportunities to share with the consultants. They need to know what your opinions are about transportation around the community. And what we're trying to really encourage the Ted and city to look at is not just which intersection is dangerous, but what is the bigger picture? What's the bigger vision for our transportation for us if we're walking, riding a bike, even cars? We want it to be all incorporated. So there'll be a quick email sent out to Nest, and so you guys can take advantage of that. But please participate, and I'll bring out more opportunities for you guys to jump in and give your opinion. So that's it. But keep going.
Our next speaker is Steve Mantelli. She is from the Sierra Club, and she has helped us in Nest with various discussions with the IMEA. And it's a really valuable resource to this community as well as, the environment at large. And she is going to appear via Zoom. And there she is, Christine, how's it going?
Thank you, Maureen. I can't see everyone, but it occurred to me as I was getting ready for this presentation that it was likely that my face was going to be projected so in such a large fashion. It's a little overwhelming because I think I've been in the room where the Nest meeting is held. But so apologies, I can't be there in person. Appreciate everyone taking the time out of a busy work week night. And for all of the amazing organizing work that Nest is doing. I'll never forget the first Nest meeting I attended. The room was packed. There were breakout sessions. It was just a class act in organizing. So, and your guys' results obviously demonstrate that. So it's a pleasure and a privilege to collaborate. So thank you guys all. Also, big thank you to Senator Ellman, who's just a tremendous leader in our state Senate, and having had the chance to sit in several rooms with her and other legislators talking about some of these tough issues. You know, a lot of folks are enamored with data centers or any number of different things in the energy space. Your senator is always asking the hard questions, always grounded, and like really thinking critically about her constituents, you guys as residents, the environment, our water resources, you name it. So it's always refreshing and gives me a lot of hope. So just wanted to name those things. I've got a brief presentation to walk through some high-level trends, concerns, things to think about that we've been looking at nationally at Sierra Club concerning data centers. And then I've got brief, but a couple of high level, I think, comments about the Karis data center proposal. But in a lot of ways, I tend to agree with what Senator Ellman was saying. I think communities really need to assess and weigh the pros and cons and take a look on the balance sheet and see what makes the most sense. And I think decision makers, whether you're an entity that is part of a public utility commission or whether you're a city council member overseeing your municipal utility, as is the case with Naperville, need to make sure there's some checks and balances, and folks are asking the hard questions as well at the municipal level and making sure there are key guardrails in place, because I think a lot of the things that we're seeing with these large new loads is unprecedented. And so every couple months, new things are emerging that we're learning about these large load customers and their impacts on the power grid, on our energy systems, and on consumers and in our climate. So why don't we dig in? I think at the high level, here's what we're seeing, the trend. We're facing unprecedented demand for energy and capacity across the country. There's a few different causes for this. There's certainly important electrification that is happening and necessary, and an important part of climate work. But we also see an enormous push and surge in data center growth. And so this is creating, I think, a lot of challenges across the power grid, across regional energy markets. Senator Ellman mentioned PJM and MISO. I'll have a few more things to say about PJM in a couple slides here. But this is really creating an unprecedented terrain in our power markets. And I work exclusively in the power sector. I'm a one-trick pony. They don't let me do transportation work or buildings or other types of like sustainability like waste issues. I am just in the power sector, and this is pretty unprecedented what we're seeing with data center growth. And there is a lot of excitement and interest in the economic opportunities and the job creation that comes from this. And for a lot of the states that have said, yes, let's open our doors and welcome these new facilities without critical guardrails in place. I mean, we're seeing a few different trends. We're seeing a rush to build new gas. We're seeing extensions, lifetime extensions for inefficient coal plants and gas plants. And we're seeing prices go up on utility bills. In Georgia alone, we've seen at least three rate hikes over the last couple of years, bills skyrocketing over, I think, 63%, if I'm not mistaken. And so we're seeing, if we're not thinking really critically and intentionally about how to, explore this opportunity in a way that's really intentional, there can be pretty problematic, catastrophic implications for both consumers and our climate. And this is, we should circulate, I'll send around the link to this map, but every couple months.
Christine, sorry, you're not sharing your screen. You're not sharing your screen.
I'm not? Oh dear.
You are not.
Apologies, guys.
We can see it in the reflection of your glasses.
That wasn't enough? Oh dear, this is what happens after back-to-back starting at 8:30, starting to get a little silly. All right. Hoping, yeah, people are gonna get all upset when you see how many, hopefully no one saw how many tabs I had up. All right.
Yeah, you're good now.
Are we okay now? All right, apologies.
Yes.
Goodness. This is the last time I'm being asked to a Nest meeting. All right, this was the slide I was just talking about. Here's the trends. We're seeing a lot of states and utilities, at least over the past year or two, that have opened up their doors. And the impact, the consequences haven't been great. So it's an important word of caution. The landscape is changing every couple months in the world of data centers, but enough has happened in some of these states and with some utilities that we're already getting some lessons learned here. And that's what we're gonna dig in and talk about. So, but this sort of, I think, kind of well captures why there's such a significant concern especially from a climate standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, in terms of the impacts that data centers are having on our power grid and on utility bills. I will circulate a link to this map. It is helpful, I think, in orienting. I think this is really just to kind of showcase Illinois. We are a prime time targeted area for data center growth, for right or for wrong. It's been that way for quite some time. And we've got, I think, we have a pretty strong electric grid. We have access to water. We have a major metropolitan area. There's a lot of different reasons why we have tax incentives at the state level. So there's a whole lot of interest in Illinois as a state. And the projections really move, and this graph was taken many months ago. It has dramatically increased in just several months to where the projected gigawatts for Illinois in each utility are upwards of 14 gigs. So when this graph was taken, it was just under 5 gigs. Now, for both utilities, ComEd and Ameren, it's close to 30 in terms of the gigawatts of projected data centers that are in their queue, interconnection queue, if you will. So this is a pretty staggering amount of projected energy demand and capacity demand on our power grid that we just frankly have not seen. For most of the last couple decades, load was generally flat. We saw a lot of gains in energy efficiency and things stayed relatively even. We're now in a pretty dramatic upward trajectory, and that's creating a whole lot of volatility in regional energy markets. So one of the challenges that we're seeing here, yes, there's a lot of big tech companies, especially the Microsofts, the Googles, the hyperscalers, if you will, the really large data centers, have clean energy and climate commitments. However, we're not building clean energy at the pace that is needed to keep up with this demand. And just having your data center developer go and attempt to buy clean energy on the wholesale market isn't enough, because we're just not building it as quickly as we need to be in regional energy markets. And so we're having increasingly a lot of supply and demand strain in markets like PJM, in MISO, and other RTOs around the country. And we've got to be thinking a little bit more creatively around this. And just a finer point on PJM here. So Sierra Club did some analysis around this really at the end, I would say, of 2024. So we took only a modest data center projection of growth for Illinois specifically at about 3 gigawatts. ComEd is now projecting over 14 gigawatts. So a lot has changed. So even just modest projections shows the impact to wholesale energy and capacity costs. We see in this bar graph, the general trend points upward. Prices are going up. The supply and demand is tough in these markets, in large part because of poor planning at the RTO level. We've got a huge backlog of clean energy projects that haven't been connected to the grid yet. PJM has been very slow on updating transmission lines. MISO has been a little bit better, but still lagging behind. You add data center, even just modest data center growth into the equation, and it exacerbates the problem twofold. So this is a unique challenge that we are facing, I mean, across the country, but certainly in Illinois as well. And in that modeling analysis, what it showed was there is just a much deeper reliance on existing gas plants to meet that demand. If we do not put certain guardrails in place, the modeling projects that we see CO2 emissions increase by 64%. And by 2035. And so we're really supposed to be bringing down our emissions, right, under the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And so not only do we completely miss and not hit our climate goals under CEJA, but we are actually dramatically increasing our carbon emissions, in large part from a reliance on existing gas plants in our energy mix. And, for those who are, really excited about the economic opportunities here, it's worth noting that unrestrained growth, could undermine big tech's outcomes as well. We saw this in, data centers have come to Aurora, but if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2 nights ago, Aurora just voted on a moratorium. I think the concerns are growing. There's a deepening and understanding of the impacts that data centers are having, especially to ratepayers. And so, I think big tech has a lot of interest in thinking critically about working with municipal utilities, working with public utility commissions and state legislatures to make sure that we are opening this opportunity with communities who are in states who are interested, but doing so with really intentional guardrails in place to make sure that we are not backtracking on climate, that we are not exacerbating local air pollution or really skyrocketing people's utility bills and further straining our power grid. So here are a couple of the top lines, and there's 4 of them. What can we be doing to demand better of big tech to protect ratepayers and our climate? The first is making sure that we are addressing distribution and transmission costs. So these are all the different costs that go into upgrading the grid to connect these really large new loads. And it's critical that public utility commissions, municipal utilities, make sure that those tech companies, they pay for all of those costs. There's no cost allocation that gets passed on to residential customers or commercial customers. The large data center customers need to pay their fair share. That's an overarching principle, and that's making sure that we're tackling those distribution and transmission costs. That's first and foremost. Second, energy and capacity costs. As we saw from modeling, and it's been captured in a lot of different analyses as well. Consumers are facing a lot of costs that get passed through from just that dramatic upward price on wholesale energy and capacity prices. So, and Senator Ellman mentioned this as well, the big principle and policy concept that we are strongly advocating that has probably the most important both consumer and climate benefit. Large data centers need to bring their own new clean energy. They've got a lot of money. They've got, I think, a lot of the critical financial tools to tee up these partnerships. And this assures that whatever the size is, so for the Karis 72 megawatts, they need to make sure that they are building to the size needed to meet both their energy and accredited capacity requirements for whatever RTO they are operating in. And making sure that included in that are some of the essential services, the transmission, the battery storage that's needed from a grid perspective to balance renewables at all hours of the day. But Beyonce is the term that's been coined on this, and it is frankly mission critical. If we care about climate, if we care about our utility bills, we will make this requirement of data centers. And the last 2, backup generation. I think Maureen mentioned this. I think one of the particularly concerning aspects of data center growth, especially for localized air quality and local communities, is the extraordinary amount of backup generation of diesel generators that these facilities bring with them. I think Karis is bringing 48 backup diesel generators at 3 megawatts each. We're just seeing staggering numbers across the board. And there's a whole conversation to be had about, ways they're being permitted and whatnot, but it does not have to be this way. There is more opportunity around backup battery storage that could be utilized, and as well as strategic location placement of these facilities to make sure that they are really meeting all of their energy needs in all hours of the day. And even in those instances when the grid goes down, there's a way for this to be done in a more healthy, sustainable way that doesn't require bringing an armada of backup diesel generators with you. And then the last one, and this has been mentioned as well, water use. How water intensive these facilities are is immensely concerning. And so I think two of the key principles that we really need to be requiring here: transparent data reporting on this. States have to be able to plan water resources, all resources, effectively. And the tech industry is really protective around this data for a lot of competitive reasons. You know, this is, everyone needs water. We got to be a lot more intentional about this, and they got to bring this information forward. And they need to be utilizing the most sustainable practices possible. I think I heard closed loop cooling being one of those. That's really the top of the line type of approach here. And there's other issues as well on e-waste and what have you, but these are some of the main ones I think to highlight. You know, when I look at I've dug in a little bit to the Karis proposal. I'll be anxious to hear the questions and thoughts coming in from folks in the meeting. But just looking at that high level, it sounds like there's closed loop cooling. So that is a positive. That is a best practice, what we would consider. Are they fully transparently reporting their data usage? Would be, I think, another question there. If I'm not mistaken, they also, and we should see I haven't seen all of the details and what the nature of that contract is with Karis, but paying for that, all those distribution and transmission costs, it sounds like there's an intent to do so. I have not heard anything about bring your own new clean energy, how that will be achieved. And that will be, I think, critically important. And also stands to be another great economic development opportunity for Naperville. And the backup diesel generators. 48 backup diesel generators. I think we can do better than that. There needs to be a greater diversity of a fuel mix for your backup generation portfolio. That's a lot of diesel. And even if they don't run very often, when the grid goes down and they blast, and they are specifically, you know, a lot of the structure of this is to and they build in the conversations I've had with some of the tech companies, they build this into the business model. They anticipate probably needing to potentially violate Clean Air Act standards in those moments when the grid goes down, and they need to be able to keep running. And we've got to figure out a way to improve that resource mix. So I will pause there. Not sure if I think I'm probably coming up on 20 minutes, but that's sort of the high level take on how Sierra Club is thinking about data centers at a national level, thinking about this, you know, and a couple of high level thoughts on the Karis proposal. And would certainly, you know, echo some of the points that Senator Ellman made. I do think the transparency legislation that we are hopeful will move in a fall veto bill requiring energy planning of municipal utilities. That's an important part of this equation in making sure that there's energy planning around some of these large new loads. And there's actually a forum to be asking more of these hard questions and planning accordingly. And, you know, from Sierra Club's perspective, we need those state guardrails in place across the board, and hoping that we can pick that conversation back up in the next legislative session next year. So I will pause and yeah.
Q&A, I want Bill Netzel to go next. He is from, we'll get the.
You can hang on for a Q&A at the end, right,
Yeah,
Christine?
Q&A at the
Okay,
end.
all right.
So Bill is actually the president of the Danada Homeowners Association, and that area is very close to the proposed data center. So as you can imagine, the citizens in that development are very concerned. So he has a talk that he actually gave to the Planning and Zoning Board a few weeks ago, and I thought it was excellent, so I wanted him to show it here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm Bill Nestor, as I mentioned, president of the Danada Woods Homeowners Association. And our development borders the data center project. I appreciate the work that Nest is doing to protect our environment and helping Naperville grow responsibly. Tonight, I'd like to walk you through why this project is the wrong fit for the city based on data, local experience, and what we've learned from other communities. Now, I'm not an expert like some of the folks that have talked here. This isn't my day job, but I have been involved with the meetings that, the homeowners had a chance to speak to the zoning board. And I've collected information from that, as well as information that I found supporting the not having this facility. All right, let me see if I can figure this tool out. Okay, so why we're here tonight? Our goal was simple: to understand what's being proposed, how it could impact Naperville's energy, water, and the environment, and what steps we can take to ensure responsible growth. Well, we'll also look briefly at what's happening in Aurora, where, as it's been mentioned a couple times today, where they've actually paused on the development of these centers. The Karis data center would sit on the former Lucent Nokia campus, which is 40 acres right next to our homes, and the Danada Forest Preserve. The proposal includes two enormous 211,000 square foot buildings, each operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This site isn't tucked away in an industrial park. It borders family homes, a children's sensory park, a spiritual center, as well as the Danada Forest Preserve. This means constant noise from cooling systems, the fans we talked about, 24/7 lighting, and heat emissions. All that affects nearby families, wildlife, and surrounding environment. The city's own land use master plan envisioned this area for housing and mixed use development, not an industrial scale facility. Simply put, it's the wrong use in the wrong place at the wrong time. In 2020, the city of Naperville approved Pulte's development, request to rezone a portion of the former Nokia property from an ORI, office research light industrial zoning, to residential, paving the way for the construction of 250 new homes on the site. That decision didn't just allow new homes to be built. It set a clear precedent, that the future land use of this property was intended to be residential. Approving a heavy industrial project here would directly contradict the paths already established by our city leaders and the expectations of the surrounding neighborhoods. Imagine the surprise of the people in Neighbor Commons who just purchased some nice houses to be now hearing about this about a year or two after they've moved in. Electricity allocation, this graph, says, I'm sorry, good planning is about putting the right things in the right place. But even more importantly is we have to look at whether our city can actually support the demands of such a project. We've heard a lot about that earlier. That starts with energy. To put things in perspective, Naperville's peak power use last year was 347 megawatts. Karis's first phase alone would consume 34 megawatts. That's roughly 10%. That's only one building. This is phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 2 has been taken off the board by the staffers right now because there's not enough energy supply to support that. So they're going to have to come back and get approval to do that once that's discovered. That same energy would be used by 27,000 homes. Concentrating that much power in a single user creates risk and limits our flexibility for future residential and commercial needs. Electricity allocation. A graphic here says it all. One industrial user taking the equivalent of thousands of homes' energy. Karis is gaining favor with the Naperville city leaders by highlighting the significant revenue their proposed data center could generate. Projected at $1 million annually in property taxes. This is going to schools and some services, and up to $3 million in utility taxes, making it one of the city's most lucrative developments. It raises the question, how does this align with Naperville's long-term sustainability and growth priorities? I'm sorry. So let's take a minute and look at this chart. If we were using 34 megawatts, as we've mentioned, and those numbers are actually from the petitioner, our property tax, as I mentioned earlier, would be a little bit less than $1 million. But if we invested in the 27,000 homes at the average rate tax rate in Naperville, we'd actually generate $240 million. So utility tax would be the same. We're using 34 megawatts. As we mentioned earlier, jobs estimate 50. They're saying 35 in phase 1, 70 when both phases get going. We'd obviously have thousands of jobs if we had 27,000 more homes. The community benefit, that was also discussed earlier, it's minimal. But with being able to put our resources, our energy resources, we could develop some new homes, neighborhoods, schools, and services. Smart planning means protecting all our shared resources, not just power. The next one we need to look at is water. And Naperville's Lake Michigan allocation is capped at 13 million gallons per day. Data centers can use up to 1 million gallons a day for cooling. Even the closed loop systems, they still lose water in evaporation. And again, I'm not an engineer, but they're basically circulating, picking up heat. That heat has to be taken off somehow, and that's discharged. It also, they have leaks, they have problems that go in there. So, the estimate is probably between 500 and 1 million a day, which is still a significant amount of water. Enough actually to support 12,000 homes or 12,000 residents. And the senator mentioned the Great Lakes. I've got one comment here that 1% of the Great Lakes water supply is replenished annually. So we must ask, is this the wise use of our shared resource? So far, we've talked about resources, energy and water, but the impacts go beyond numbers. They affect people, health, and safety. This facility would rely on massive diesel storage and monthly generator testing. And while Naperville has excellent first responders, we have to ask, are they truly equipped for a hazmat scale diesel incident in a residential neighborhood? Let's look at what that means for public health. Diesel exhaust is not a nuisance. I mean, it's not just a nuisance. It's a public health hazard. The World Health Organization classifies it as a carcinogen. The EPA links it to asthma, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Monthly generator testing means recurring exposure, not just during emergencies. This is community risk. This is a community risk that we can't ignore. And thinking about that, the number of generators and backup generators and how many times they would have to test that equipment each month. Okay, these aren't just hypothetical things that I've been talking about. Our neighbors in Aurora have already faced them. After experiencing diesel fumes, nonstop generator noise, and major community disruption at an existing data center, their city council took action. Let's look at the lessons Aurora has learned and why Naperville should pay close attention. So what happened? Okay. Oh no. Are we back? Okay. You go. I've only got a little bit of cord over here to work with, so it's possible. Anyhow, last Thursday night, the Aurora City Council unanimously approved a 6-month moratorium on new data centers and warehouses. Why? Because repeated generator failures and noise from Cyrus 1 facility led to major resident complaints. I understand that they had to build sound walls. Some of the residents were actually displaced from their homes temporarily. So it created some major issues. They're now studying the full impacts from emissions and energy draw to stormwater and traffic before allowing more development. Naperville should take the same careful, measured approach before committing to a project of this magnitude. Nationally, and we've talked that there was talk about the national impact. Data centers could consume up to 12% of our electricity needs by 2028. That's a huge footprint for one industry. These facilities also generate heat, noise, and require constant cooling, all counter the principles in Naperville's Sustainability and Climate Action Plan. To meet our scape goals, we must protect the balance between growth, energy conservation, and environmental stewardship. So what can we do? We're not saying no development. We're saying smart, informed development. Here's how Nest can help. Advocate for independent, transparent studies on energy, water, and noise impact before any approvals. Speak out against this conditional use permit under the ORI. The ORI has in it that data centers were approved to go into those areas, but 10 years ago, legislation changed it and said, you know, they can go in, but it's conditional. And so this is what we're asking everyone to look at now to make that right decision, that this isn't the right place for that data center to go in. Recommend that Naperville also adopt safeguards such as banning potable water for cooling and requiring data centers to publicly report energy and water usage. Haven't heard anything about Beyonce at any of the meetings, so I guess they haven't even thought of that. Encourage collaboration between the city, homeowners associations, local environmental groups, so the community can input and shape decisions before they start. Okay, in closing, this project may work elsewhere, but not here. It is the wrong use in the wrong place at the wrong time. And our community believes that it should strengthen Naperville and not strain it. Let's protect our people, our forests, and our shared future. Thank you for your time and for all the work that you do to keep Naperville sustainable and a forward-thinking city.
Some great talks tonight. What we're gonna do is have a combination of a Q&A session and then an open mic where people can just come and share thoughts. But we'll start with the Q&A and then we can have one of the many speakers answer. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that I did talk to Brett, I can't remember his last name, unfortunately, from Karis about battery storage. He was not interested at all. So I just wanted to share that. Christine mentioned it.
It's difficult, it's expensive. If he doesn't have to, he won't. We have to make him. I don't want to be breathing diesel, thank you very much.
Yeah. And as this last talk mentioned, the diesel generators do have to be tested once a month. That's because, you know, when you have your emergency, you can't afford to turn them on and they fail, right? So that testing will go for like an hour or two every month of all 48, because you have to make sure that when you have the disaster that they're ready to go. So that's another thing. And also it was mentioned in the planning and zoning was there has to be a diesel tank at the site. And somebody was able to give numbers on how big it was. I don't remember those.
Yeah, it's, you know, from my calculations, based on the size of generators and other facilities, about 100 to 150,000 gallons of diesel.
Okay. So that is substantial, and there are the two forest preserves. There's Herrick Lake, and there is Danada, the equestrian center. So those are around that area. So anyway, just
It's important to note that the ponds there, and there's actually a creek across the road, Naperville Road. Doesn't look like a creek, looks like a ditch, but it's actually something called Rock Creek. It actually drains into the Page River directly through Lyle down there. So it's, you know, there is fresh flowing water right across the street, and basically traveling on storm.
okay, thank you for that.
Should we bring this?
Just a technical point, we are broadcasting this presentation, this meeting today to folks that are jumping on online. We'll record it and put it on Nest's YouTube channel, but we can't hear questions from the room. So could we have folks, if you have a question, come up so that you can ask it near the podium?
I don't.
Okay, so there's somebody in the back who's been raising their hand. You want to come up there?
Do we want to have the speakers come up here too?
Yes.
Speak up loudly.
Sure.
This question is for Bill. In
Bill?
particular,
I know that Nokia will benefit from selling that property to make the data center, but what is their position on building a data center on that property?
Talking to the laptop.
Yeah, talking to her. And repeat
Get to
the
talking
question.
like that.
Repeat the question and then.
I think the question was, what is Nokia's position as far as what they plan to do with the data center? Or whether they're supporting sale of the data center? Well, I think that they, at this point, they've gone into negotiations to sell it to the Karis group. One of the questions that was mentioned at the hearing was from one of the zoning committee commissioners, was they want to know what their plan is after they set this data center up, and what kind of assurances and commitments they can give to the zoning board about the future. Yeah, because this could be a bubble, you know, we could have a new way of taking care of our computer processing in a few years that nobody's thought of yet. And that buildings are going to go away, just like, you know, the building that's up there right now is set virtually empty for two decades. 2 decades. And, you know, it's unbelievable that, you know, here we are, we're going to put another building up there, all brick and, you know, a fortress here. And then it goes away in 10 years and it sits for another 20 or 30 or whatever, till somebody comes in and demolishes it and we get some more homes. Homes were critical to Naperville. I mean, our supply is down. We've got like a 1.5 inventory of homes that needs to increase almost, I think I read, to 14,000 more homes by 2026. I'm sorry, 2027.
Just for the people online, what was said in the room was that Nokia sold that land to a developer, and that developer is the one working with Karis.
Do we know who the customer is of the data center? Is there one customer or are there multiple customers?
Yeah,
And what is
so-
their position on it?
Right, so when I went to the presentation that Karis made at the Northern Illinois University campus that's in Naperville, they just had a poster and they said, well, it's going to be like apartments. So companies can come and rent space in the data center. And then all they had were representative companies, and they had logos of like Bank of America, Microsoft. But those weren't real customers. Those were just examples of potential customers. So I don't think they have any customers yet. I don't know that for sure, but that's how it's going to run. And they could rent it to many companies or just a couple companies. That's all, according to what they told me, that's unknown.
I worked in this industry for 30 years, and typically, you know, what these companies will do is they'll build this facility and think of it as an empty apartment building. They're selling little bitty racks, so 19 about this size rack, you know, 8 feet tall. They're basically selling that as the unit of how it's being filled. So a company large enterprise will come in and say, oh, we want 6 of them, or we want the equivalent of 20 of them, and they're purchasing or leasing more the space in those racks. Now, how they charge is basically based on power consumption. So most of these facilities, if you're going to use 10,000 kilowatts per rack, this is what the rate's going to be. And that's basically how their build is based on a formula is mostly based on power, because where there's power used, there's heat generated, There needs to be cooling to get that out of there. There needs to be the generator power to make it work. So the facilities way of selling this is basically they're reselling the power is ultimately what they're doing.
What
So-
about the datacom connections? Are they gonna
That's-
secure the roads? Are they gonna put long towers for the fiber optics and? Is
So
that gonna go under?
most of that's already there. So that's a very highly connected intersection already. They may add some, to it, but there's a lot of benefits to this location for the developer. So certainly, where the fiber optics are and already are and running along 88, right? There's a reason why all of these facilities are right around along 88 is because abundant power close to the transmission lines and the fiber optic connections. So will they have to dig up? Certainly they're not gonna put anything on the power poles anymore, right? Everything will be buried. And very likely they would just use directional boring and do it, underneath the road and whatever. So.
Maureen, just a quick question, if you can repeat it for this gentleman. If they're selling based on power, that means there's a disincentive to reduce the power and find efficient. Right?
No, yeah, these places are marketed based on the size of the power. So, if you go and look these up, and so I purchased space in them. When you go and look at facilities, they'll talk to you about how much power they have incoming. They'll talk to you about the size of their backup generators. Those are all actual things that companies that are putting gear there are going to want to know before they go in there. So they want to make sure that there's going to be adequate power, so they have adequate expansion capabilities and things like that. And probably one of the other things that hasn't been talked about a lot here. I'm sorry to talk, but 20 years ago, these facilities were approximately 1 to 200 watts per square foot. It's kind of a design. So like when you look at the entire size of the facility, it's 100 to 200 watts per square foot. Now these facilities are 3 to 4 plus 100 watts per square foot. So they've almost doubled in the amount of power requirements and how they're building these facilities. So when we talk about data centers even 10 years ago, the scale is just different now, right? The power usage is different. Now it's hard to take current day servers and put them in a 15-year-old data center, and you would only be able to fill the racks halfway or a quarter of the way, as opposed to being able to use it because you're going to run out of power before you run out of space, basically. So it's just a very different thing from the scale perspective nowadays, which makes a lot of people like 10 years ago, they're like, oh, a data center, fine, put a data center there. It's going to have a couple generators. It's going to, it's not going to be as much noise and things like that. Now, and yes, they keep trying to compare this to a hyperscaler like Facebook or Meta's data center out in DeKalb, which is ginormously larger, right? This is still not a data center from 10 years ago, which was what everyone thinks about data centers. They're very different types of facilities nowadays. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I think we need to prohibit the use of diesel or other things like that. If the current battery won't work, then something else, I like the bring your own sustainable energy. That really has to be the deal. I do not want to live next to diesel fumes, nor does anybody else. And if they have to scale back and we can only have a data center that's a tenth of what it was, like it was several years ago, then that's what we have to do. And we're depending on our senator to try to make that happen.
I have a comment about the bring your own clean energy. Because we are a Naperville electric utility and we don't have consumer choice for our electricity, this is not even an option here in Naperville. So it's another don't do it here, wrong place, wrong time. So I guess I have a question for Christine as well. So you talked about how this could extend the life of gas plants and coal plants. So we get most of our electricity from 2 coal plants. Is this going to have an impact on extending the life of those coal plants as well?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. I think it remains to be seen. I think it depends on what the contract is and the arrangement with the city of Naperville. And Karis, and then also, yeah, I think next steps, you have your city's current power sales contract with IMEA. So I think it's a question mark, but what I do think the utility can do is depending on what happens with IMEA, I do think some type of agreement could be made to bring your own new clean energy. I do think there's a legal way to do that requires them to build somewhat near their location somewhere in the general vicinity.
Okay, next question.
I've got a question. You brought something up about, both gentlemen brought something up about innovation, new developments. So I'm curious, and I appreciate any information you might provide. What happens if, in 8 years, new technology arises, this facility becomes obsolete because there's even bigger and better and nobody would want to even lease stuff here. Yet a lot of these companies seem flush with cash. What happens if they just abandon that?
Right.
I mean, and what's preventing them from just abandoning it? And what does that mean for the property value of that space for the next development? So any answers you've got, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, if it's great, because how they're consuming data center space, it seems, and what's happening in the technology industry, it seems like we're not on a path to solving the need for less data centers. It seems like it's kind of going the opposite. No, a lot of this is speculative, right? They're speculative. Back in the 90s, we overbuilt data centers. A bunch of them went out of business. Is that happening now? It's hard to know. I'd love to think that the technology innovation will change, and all of a sudden stop needing some of this capacities that are behind. It's probably not going to happen. I have a feeling that as humans, we're going to consume more and more, need some of the stuff, unfortunately.
Okay, next question.
I just would like to make a comment. The scientists at Argonne didn't have an answer. That wasn't approached about the new development of new technologies. That wasn't talked about. And new sources of energy.
Okay, next question.
I follow a lot of social media groups, which I'm sure everyone does, and there's a lot of comments there with concerns about the data center. So I was wondering, what is there? I know there's a petition out there that I've signed. I was wondering if there's any recommendation for the most effective way to get to the decision makers. Like I believe that's Naperville Planning and Zoning. Don't have their email address right in front of me, and our council people. And I was just wondering, is the most effective recommendation to get to the decision makers to get these concerns?
So you put it rolled over and like the structure of the.
Okay, they've commented on the lights in the parking lot and the type of asphalt used. They don't seem to care about Herrick Lakes and the natives are practically adjacent to this parcel.
Yeah,
So
so,
can I
go
ask,
ahead.
I'll address the second question first. So I talked to Dan Hebrard, the president of the Forest Preserve, last week. I sent him a white paper on the health and environmental impacts. He said that they will look at it again, so that's the update.
I invited them tonight.
I invited them tonight
So I wanted to answer the question about contacting city council and the planning and zoning. Yeah, definitely email the city council, and then also the next planning and zoning meeting is October 15th. If you want to show up, and there were a lot of people in the room last time, but I will give you a tip. There were a lot of people there, but it wasn't packed. What you're gonna need to do is go to that neighborhood where that's around the data center and get everybody to come. You need more people. You have a pretty good, there was a pretty good number of people, but the room wasn't filled. When you fill the room, it sends a message. There's 250 seats, right, in that room?
225.
225. See, Ness knows this. So, but also email the city council. Their email addresses are on the website. Definitely, they do read those. For the planning and zoning, you sign up to give a statement. And we were there until, was it 10:30 or 11 o'clock? I can't remember. The people giving statements, they do sit and listen to everybody. Same is true with the city council. I've been to city council meetings that have gone till, 10:30, 11:30 at night. And with the city council, you have to sign up in advance on the website to speak. You get 3 minutes. I was actually interested, the planning and zoning said you had 3 minutes, but they actually did let Ed give his whole talk. So he had that nice PowerPoint presentation. They let him do the whole thing, even though it was more than 3 minutes. But city council has a strict 3 minute. They will, cut you off and cut off the mic. So, but it's important that you show up and say, your thoughts on this. It does matter. And the most important thing, the final vote. So the planning and zoning will give a recommendation to the city council. The city council doesn't have to follow that. The most important vote is the city council vote.
When is that?
I don't know. So we just know that the next meeting is planning and zoning on October 15th. So just being from Nest, you have to go to all these things.
Yeah, we have a Nest email sign up over here. If anyone wants to sign up for a Nest email via the list, we'll be sending out updates about when these meetings are. All of that.
Thank you.
The other tip I have for you is that people from Aurora did come to the planning and zoning, but they were, at least I felt, I was sitting in the audience. They didn't tell the story enough about the noise. They said there was noise, but they didn't say what it was, how it was constant. So I thought the noise was coming and going. It wasn't until I talked to the mayor, and the mayor says, no, the noise is from the fans. The fans are on top of the building and they're always going. So somebody at planning and zoning said, the noise is actually at a conversational level. So the noise doesn't have to be, and it's very difficult to, quantify noise, but it doesn't have to be above a certain decibel level to be annoying. So that's another issue. So I didn't understand what the person said. They just came to planning and zoning and said, the noise is at a conversational level. They didn't say it was from fans. They didn't say it never goes away, which is another important thing. So the diesel noise will come and go, but the noise from the fans will never stop. So they have to, when you get up there to talk, you have to say a paragraph instead of fragments of things, because I'm sitting in the audience and I didn't get it. I still don't know why the people had to go and live in hotels. So there was some problem in Aurora that caused people to have to leave their homes and go live in a hotel. What was that about? I have no idea.
So they had to replace some electrical grid equipment, so like a transformer. And the only way they could do that without losing power to the facility is run the generators continuously until they had the power problem. So it's something they were able to schedule. to replace that equipment, but that's what happens.
But it rained for days.
It ran for days.
The diesel generators ran for days.
And how many paid for the?
So how many people had to move into a hotel?
Yeah, there's not a lot of neighbors there that ordered that property. I think there's maybe 8. They're very long lots, like 300 feet
Okay.
or more lots. I don't know how many of those.
Yeah, we went out, my husband does engineering and we went out and measured and it was 1,000 feet from the back of the person's lot to the facility. And we're talking actually like from my house to the proposed data center is 900 feet.
Right. So there was another thing that was important at the planning and zoning of Naperville. There were people who got up and talked and said, we live less than 1,000 feet from this. That was very effective from this proposed data center. That you're that close. That was very impactful. So,
And any diesel accident means that it's in our water.
Right.
yes. So that was brought up at the planning and zoning that if the diesel leaks, it is possible that it will harm the water and creeks and streams nearby.
All your well water.
And our well skillet.
Anyone else want to come up and make a comment or have a question?
I have one other thing to say. She was talking about the diesel. And I have asthma and I have to watch air quality. And there are days when I cannot go out and exercise because I just be coughing my head off. It's difficult to breathe. So diesels, that is a concern for me. I'd rather see solar or some other form of energy generation.
Thank you. One more.
Yeah, I have this from people on the Zoom. Has Karis committed any sustainability efforts from an embodied or an operational carbon perspective? Do you know if they've committed any kind of sustainability commitments at all?
I'm not aware of any sustainability.
Right.
Hi, folks. My name's Trey. Also, hi. And yeah, I'm speaking for a few folks. I think they're also joining us on Zoom and people I've been talking with that live around Naperville. But yeah, I know at least my family has experienced a lot of the effects of the climate crisis. I have family that out in Illinois, like East Central Illinois, that have experienced tornadoes, and also out in Florida that have experienced hurricanes. So all different, effects of climate crisis. And I'm also thinking about, I have a friend right now that's living out of their car, living paycheck to paycheck. And I know that utility rates are a really big concern, especially for a lot of people. I don't really see how adding more data centers without actually talking about, what is the actual effect on consumers? Are people going to be experiencing the rate hikes? And I don't think that's fair or just. And yeah, also the health impacts on children. A lot of people are talking about, diesel impacts. My mind goes to the worst areas of sacrifice zones of where communities have high rates of cancer and asthma because they allow for these types of centers to go in without any sort of community pushback because they kind of just push through. But I think there's a lot of room to organize around this. I'm thinking about in Memphis and in Indianapolis, where they just shut down the data centers that are happening there. The communities, they organized and they went to the community councils and basically shut down the proposals. And also in Itsby, in Michigan, they got their city council to vote on not approving the data center. So I think that we have a really big opportunity to do something. And so would love to talk with more folks that are opposed to the data center being approved in Naperville. And yeah, I think just want to put that out there that it's possible for us to get what we want. I think people just have to organize around it. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I have two things, and one is actually probably a question for JD. One of the things that I've seen like on social media is that there's already a data center there with Nokia. So can you tell me what the difference is between the current data center that is on the property that's probably been there for like 10, 20 years and the proposed data center? Like, what's the difference? Why would it matter to us?
I just scale, right? So the one that's there is minuscule in comparison. I don't know how many I don't know how many racks.
Well, it's just for Nokia.
Yeah, it's just for Nokia. You know, it's probably 40 years old, right? Just from there's only two or three generators there.
Mhm.
It's just very different.
Yeah, and we almost don't know what's there.
No, you know, 10 years ago, data centers, you wouldn't notice it in a building, and just because the scale was so much different.
Yeah, and a lot of businesses like office buildings the size of, say, Nokia would probably have a data center within it for their, yeah, okay. That's I keep seeing this, and they're like, there's already a data center, what's the problem? Well, guess what? It's different.
Yeah.
You know, that's
It's like comparing
a Marvel
very
Studio
small
they have.
line.
Yeah. Right. And the other thing is I've heard some whispers and stuff about the petition. I do have the link for it. So if anybody has not signed, there's a petition on change.org just specifically about this data center. We've been sharing it with, we shared the number count back at the planning and zoning. It was around 1,800. We're just under 2,100. We'd love it to get anybody, you know, the city of Naperville, people who care about residents of the city of Naperville to sign it. So you can.
Can you put it on the email thing as well?
I can share like the QR code or the link to it so that they
you
can.
Put the link on the email, yeah, thing.
Yeah, we can.
Somebody can do that, yeah.
It's on the screen.
Okay.
You can go ahead. I'll just
Do questions.
Oh, I have it open somewhere, I think so. But
So,
I can
gentleman
just-
mentioned that, power requirements for these data centers doubled in last 10 years. So is it, a good assumption to make that the power consumption and water requirement for cooling will also, these numbers that were, presented in presentations, these numbers will double in next 10 years and then maybe quadruple in next 5 years? And that's one question. Secondly, I think data centers require highly reliable energy. So I know that there's some talk about renewable energy like solar or wind, but in my limited understanding, solar and wind cannot provide that kind of energy that data centers require. So more than likely, they will eventually start relying on the grid. Thank you.
Is Senator Ellman the only political and person, rep, alderman, city council person? You just came right in time.
Had another meeting, so he just.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I was at the budget meeting, so the chamber, so I thought that they should be coming and attending and seeing, meeting some of the residents to exactly know. So that, you know, we can navigate those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the information. You know, it's a great learning opportunity also for me. I do want to kind of put you two on the spot. We were, so warning, being at the zoning meeting and just reading through the zoning laws that talk about what a conditional use is and that it should not harm nearby properties. It shouldn't limit the use or enjoyment of nearby properties. It shouldn't endanger public health in any way. We can see very obviously that this is going to do all of those things. In addition, they were asking for a variance, which there is no hardship running with the land there. It's a self-induced hardship. So
being present in that meeting and also witnessing the zoning board, yes, hearing from all of the concern from the citizens as is necessary for them to do. The feeling that I got as a citizen was that this has already been decided.
Yeah.
So I'm putting you guys on the spot to know, you know, it clearly goes against our zoning laws. Yet there are multiple people having that feeling. So, you know, you're in this world day to day. What are the ways that you see that we can really navigate it? Like, yes, we can petition, yes, we can show up, but what are the other ways that you really see to have some effective change to maneuver this system? Because it does feel like it's very much already decided. So we're just showing up and it's somewhat performative. And we will do that so that right doesn't go away, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we will. But at the same time, I really would love to learn from both of you in that, you know, you're in this every day. How does it work?
Yeah, I don't know you know, if a planning and zoning commission violates these rules, what is the remedy? Maybe it might have to be decided by a lawsuit.
Yes.
I don't know. That's, you know, that's usually the remedy when a body violates
That's
rules.
expensive.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And what citizen can afford that?
Right, exactly.
Could I add a little bit to that? I think Maureen mentioned this before. The Planning and Zoning Committee makes recommendations. And they're all an appointed body, appointed by the mayor, confirmed by the city council. But it's our city council that will be making the ultimate decision on this. Yes, you can show up, write comments, deliver public comments, write letters to the editor, that sort of thing, to try to influence planning and zoning committee. But the folks that will make the ultimate decision, the city council. And so get familiar with city council meetings, get to know your city council people, and make sure that your voice is heard.
Anything else?
I have something. Education is the key. So we need to keep on educating the community, elected officials, your city council members, mayor, engaging them multiple times, you know, and that is there. And if we can have a poll so that, you know, we can educate to the community and get a feedback from the community, what they feel about the data center. I think that will be the key again. We have 1,000, 2,000 people sharing their feedback, saying that no, we don't want to have a data center in this area in Naperville because of 10 reasons, you know. I think things can change for now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been in touch with the planning and zoning team also, checking their pulse, trying to know how they are working, how they are, so still they are not clear what they are going to do it. And they are still learning, trying to understand from both the sides. So maybe in the next meeting or something, you know, they will take a decision, but as of now, they are still learning. What, you know, yeah.
And is it true that the mayor has some involvement or particular interest in like, and on a business side to be involved in the building of the data center from a like concrete?
I cannot comment on that.
Just want to put it out there.
Just
Want to put it out there.
So along those lines, I chair the waste team for Nest, which is totally unrelated to this, but the 1,000-foot distance to residents really struck me because there is a state law that any solid waste facility cannot be closer than 1,000 feet to any residential area or a school or a nursing home, those kind of things. Why wouldn't there be a similar rule at the state level? You know, this is a big source of air pollution, of noise, traffic. Why wouldn't that be a regulation?
Yeah.
Okay, and Laura, questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah, Katie's got
yeah,
some.
most of the, Probably the other thing that's of interest is that this is one of the only data centers that's being proposed in a non-industrial, heavy industrial area. Almost every other data center in Chicago, and there are a couple exceptions of some smaller data centers that are tucked between the interstate and large commercial parks that are zoned commercial, but I could only find 3 or 4 of them in Chicago that were zoned that way. Everything else was industrial. And this is supposed to be light industrial, right? These again aren't light industrial facilities by any definition I can find of what's the difference between heavy industrial and light industrial. So I think that's another big component. It doesn't seem like planning and zoning, like I think there's still some education issues about what these facilities are like. Like I think they need to go on some tours or something to go see what these things are like.
I've been neighborhood 24 years, and in that time, Naperville has approved 3 or 4 new neighborhoods. So clearly, they're evolving this area towards more residential. So why they would inject something that's very anti-residential is very counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
So I would love to know what their thinking is on that.
I have no idea. I think you need to educate them, because you know what.
I've been trying. I've been trying. I've written letters. I would say the other thing that's kind of, these facilities do have batteries as well, a large quantity of batteries. There's this period of time between when the power goes out and the generators start that they have to have very large batteries to sustain the facility in that few minute time where there's no power. Most of these batteries are lithium ion that are being deployed in the newer facilities, which carry a huge fire risk. You combine many, again, scale, right? You look at it, how hard it is for the fire department to put out a burning electric car. This is, I think, hundreds of electric cars worth of batteries in this facility, combined with the diesel fuel. These facilities have very good safety controls and things like that. And it comes out of human air that causes a problem. When these facilities start on fire, if it's a big fire, it's not uncommon that they just completely burn down. Big one in France, a big one in Denmark. In the United States, we've been a little, there haven't been total facility losses, but they're also, the facilities this size are pretty new from the scale. It's a different engineering problem.
You don't put those fires out. If you get
No.
something that is going, it has to burn itself out.
You walk away.
A lithium battery fire that size.
Yep. And these houses that are most adjacent to the facility are 220 some feet away, I think.
Less than 300.
Yeah. So, again, these people are sleeping that close to a generator if they're running. So, at night, the power goes out on a hot summer night, which it often does around here after a thunderstorm or whatever.
Yes.
Those poor people are going to have 48 generators within 200 and some feet of them running. So they're not going to be able to open their windows because of the fumes. It's too hot. They can't stay in their house. What do we do? All those neighbors have to leave. Those are, 7-unit townhomes, and there's a whole bunch of them. That's not real fair that the neighborhood would be signing them up for that, right? Like, just doesn't seem cool.
Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you.
All right, we got another question.
But it seems to me that city council, the long-term interest really is, it comes down to the budget and money. After this thing is built, it's up and running and it's going, what does it really mean to the city? The number I saw was about $1 million a year, is that right?
Yes, the tax
The
is
tax, the
1.8
ongoing
million.
income from this facility, $1 million there, plus whatever jobs provides.
Yes.
And I also saw that it's about 40 acres, right? So if you were to put up on quarter-acre lots about 4 homes, which is common density found around here, and they were assessed about $500,000 each, which is kind of average around here. That would produce more money than this place would produce in terms of tax revenue.
Right, Ed had a slide that showed exactly that.
And I think that's probably where a lot of the opposition's been. The most significant opposition on the city board is probably thinking financially and not necessarily about environmental impacts or pollution. So to have an argument for them as well as give them alternatives, that could probably be solved. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
City of Naperville should really ask Nokia what their intentions are with their facility long-term, because if Nokia wasn't there, I think realtors would really like to turn that into property for residences. And that whole corner then could be
Yeah,
turned into residences, but because Nokia is there, it's like, well, there's already a big facility there with a data center, and I'm just gonna add to it.
Right, so
Nokia was planning to pull out, like they sold off half the building there. I think, it would turn into residential.
So the comment was about turning the Nokia land into residential, and what is Nokia's plan for that area? I don't know what it is. I don't have an answer to that. So we need to wrap. It's almost 8:30, but I really appreciate your attendance here. I thought we had a great conversation. And if you can, attend the October 15th Planning and Zoning, and then whenever there's a city council meeting, this data center doesn't have to be on the agenda. You can just sign up to make a comment about it. You don't have to wait. In fact, you don't want to wait until the day of the vote. That's too late. You need to talk before to the city council before there's a vote, to convince them, to educate them, whatever. So you need to do that now. And we don't know yet what the date will be for the city council to vote, but don't worry about that. Just go and talk. Thank you for your time. Thanks for getting this all set. That was such a good talk.
You know what? These are handouts. You want to send them over to the thing?
All right, yeah, very
Can I take it?
informative. Yeah, just one second. I was just gonna try to pull up this planning and zoning commission meeting.
So you made a copy of the slides, right?
I did,
Because some people
yes.
ask for copies of my slides.
I will send that to Fernando to get distributed. You can just hang on one second. I'm just gonna try to get the planning and zoning commission meeting pulled up so people can see it. Although I might be a little late on that. Here, the 15th at 7 p.m. Okay.